Hey y'all, welcome to the Breaking Skin podcast. My name is Kale Pearson. You may know me as Kale Tattoos on Instagram and in the studio. I am so excited to have you guys here to hear more from the women in the tattoo industry and all the stories behind what built them. My first guest is Lauren Dunkin. You may know her as Dope Toast on Instagram or in the studio. What's really special about Lauren's career is she started teaching herself to tattoo in 2013 and has been able to transition into a really successful career, traveling across the country, doing a ton of events. In our conversation, we talked a lot about being human in tattooing, imposter syndrome, and what her journey has been like to grow this really special career. So thanks for joining me, and let's break some skin with Lauren. Lauren, thank you for hanging out with me. I'm really excited.
Thanks for having me. So nice for the first episode. Feels so special.
Yeah, well, we're friends, so I thought it would be good. Really, I just want to talk about your experience in the industry, being a woman, being on kind of like not a traditional studio setting. But I feel like you've had a lot of really cool experiences, and whenever we go anywhere, you know everybody. So yeah, you've done a lot of cool
you
work.
get for living in a town so long. Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. So I guess tell me about your first year in tattooing, like getting started, what it looked like, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I started doing hand poke tattooing like so many that we know, especially in our shop. And it just started out as like a after party thing where everyone wanted to give themselves tattoos and I was just a little better at it than everyone else. But because I come from like a more like fine art background, painting, drawing, my mom and my grandma and my great grandmother are all artists and painters, so it was just kind of always around me. And then yeah, the tattooing just came from like a more debaucherous fun time. So I started tattooing myself and then did some on a lot of friends. Luckily, I didn't have a ton on myself before people started letting me do it. I mean, I still see some of those early ones out there and I'm like, don't tell anyone I did that or let me fix it.
I think everyone has those. Yeah.
Everyone has those, but you have to start somewhere. And yeah, so it was just doing it for fun on people. And then, yeah, over time, I kind of started to realize that I could make it a job and people were wanting to like pay me after a while. And I was still working other jobs, obviously. And it was like a get home from work tattoo till like 2 or 3 in the morning in my apartment and then go to work the next day. And after a while, it just kind of became a thing. But doing pop-ups is what really got me moving on it. I had friends, because I worked in a vintage store, I had friends who owned vintage stores in town, and they would have me tattoo in the back of their vintage stores to bring in more foot traffic to their business. So it was kind of like a copacetic situation. So they were like, yeah, like you come in here, we'll have people send them to the back, but then their friends can shop around, and it helped each other out. And that kind of got my name out and about in town. And then I kind of took a little hiatus for a couple of years working at another job, and then realized that I missed tattooing. And so I got back into it. And then Emily, who owns No Good, reached out to me and was like, why aren't you tattooing at my shop? So that was my first experience moving into a shop in like 2019 after many years of just doing it in my living room and at parties and in the back of vintage stores.
So why tattooing when it came to like your career and like what you really wanted to invest in your life? Like obviously you've spent a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy into this. So why this?
I just kind of, I don't know, I had wanted to go into a art career of some sort, but when I was like in high school, I was told the only avenue for that was graphic design. I'm also from like a small town in South Texas, so I don't think there was a ton of like, options for that down there. And I did go to college for graphic design. I did not finish, but I got pretty far. And yeah, just decided it wasn't for me, the kind of work that I was doing. And I was working jobs anyway. So I was like, I'm already making money. Why am I continuing with this? Um, so when this kind of like, it really just accidentally happened through just having fun. I feel like people gravitate towards people who are just having a good time doing something they're into. And I think that was just like a special set of circumstances for me. Like I was just doing a thing because I was having fun doing it. And people all of a sudden heard about it and wanted it and then started reaching out to me about it. And then I was just able to do it. And then it wasn't like, I want to say it was like this intentional move into this career, but it really just kind of fell upon me and all the pieces just kind of moved into place, which I know is very lucky. But yeah, it was just kind of, I knew I wanted to do art and then it just fell into my lap. And then I was like, oh, I'm doing art. It's already happening. And now I get to just keep doing it. And then just it started refining itself. And now I'm doing it full time all the time for the last like 6 years. So yeah.
Yeah. What does that feel like? Like that snowball effect from home to, okay, Emily's talking about a studio.
Well, I mean, Emily and I like kind of ran in the same like fun little party circles. And I remember running into her at a little after party on the east side where she was like dreams of grandeur of like, I want to open a shop. I don't want to be doing this like in this way anymore. And I was like, cool girl, like I don't know how to do that. Like, I wish you all the best. Like, that's awesome. And I was just pretty content doing it out of my studio and like having my little situation. But then, yeah, it got to a point where I was like, I kind of want to do this like more professionally. And she provided the platform, which I'm super grateful for. But yeah, I mean, it felt intimidating, especially like I know the history of like, apprenticeships and like, I'm just someone who taught myself how to do it. And there's definitely like layers of imposter syndrome in there, which I still feel occasionally all the time. And so I just feel like, yeah, it felt good, but it was definitely a transition. Like moving into that is a very intimidating field to get into. And to say like you're self-taught is like, I'm almost partly can be a little ashamed of it because I'm just like, yeah, I taught myself how to do this. And like all those old heads are looking at you kind of like, yeah, you didn't, walk 20 miles in the snow to get to where you are or whatever. But I think the culture's changed a lot. And I'm been able to meet a lot of like tattooers who've been tattooing like 15, 20 years who are like very forthcoming with information. So it made the transition into going from like a studio to a more formal environment a little more welcoming and easier. But that happened in the like last, 10 years. It's like not a new, or it is a new thing that's happened.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely more happening in Austin compared to other cities. I mean, New York, Chicago, LA, that's different. They're also having like this more like DIYer. I think whenever I was more in a traditional studio, I always thought about it like the indie studios, like the independent studios, more like the alternative girls. Like they were doing something different.
Yeah.
So it wasn't always like a bad thing, but it is interesting, like coming from a traditional background. I don't think it's like a secret that the tattoo industry is a mystery to so many people, and it's very wild west, especially in Texas, like kind of unregulated compared to other states, and then scary to like walk into a shop. And then there is a divide, between the DIY or the indie, whatever you want to call it, space, contemporary space versus the traditional shop. There's like a weird disconnect. I'm hoping that changes.
Yeah, and I feel like it is already a little bit. Like I know some more traditional tattooers now that are like, inviting fine line artists into their studios. And like I know some hand pokers who work right next to like, Chicano traditional tattooing. And like it's just kind of, there's like a cool bridge being built right now where you're seeing a lot of that and they're being recognized as like equal forms, which I think is pretty cool. Like there's something to learn from each of them. And I think if your style is sick, like anyone can recognize that. If you see like a cool healed tattoo and you're like, oh my God, who did that? whether it be hand poke, machine, traditional, fine line, like, an artist will recognize like a good craft in something. So I think that's kind of helping. It's not, I think there's higher quality self-taught tattoos out there now, and people are seeing those and being like, okay, there's something there. It's not just like this shitty, blown out, dotty kitchen table tattoo that I'm having to cover up. It's like people are actually doing it and doing it well. But I think that's also from the massive amounts of information out there now. It's like people aren't having to shoot in the dark as much and have a little more turnaround on like quality than maybe it took a few years.
When somebody's got a clean setup and a good heel tattoo and a big success, whatever success looks like, lots of clients making a living, whatever, you can't really like dog it. Like, you can't
Yeah.
look at it weird. I think it is getting better, and I've also certainly seen some less than desirable tattoos come out of a traditional setting as well. So it really can go either way. Do you think that, like, through your perspective specifically, like through your career, through your lens, what has it been like walking into an intimidating field, a male-dominated field that's very unmapped for the DIY space, the female space, the queer space?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely didn't have some great first tattoo shop experiences when I was like 18. Definitely like male dominated, like asking you to take off articles of clothing that are not necessary to do a tattoo on your arm, like really misogynistic stuff where if you don't know, you're unaware. And I feel like going into those spaces now, there's more knowledge out there and people like kind of know their rights. And like we even have like a client affirmations framed in our lobby of like, you can move the stencil as many times as you need. Like, it's okay to be annoying, like stuff like that. So I feel like the difference in the culture now, it makes it a little less intimidating because you're able to like go in with a little bit more knowledge and like people are talking to each other a little more. But I also think the younger generation is like a little bit better about putting their foot down about what they'll tolerate, versus even 10 years ago. Like it just wasn't common knowledge. And you go into the spaces and you're like automatically, you don't know what's going on. You don't know what they're doing. Nothing is really explained to you. You're just kind of sent in there and you get who you get. But now you can go on Instagram and like walk into different shops and you get to see like entire portfolios of someone and their growth and see like every which style that they can provide to you. And I also think word of mouth in like a town like Austin too. It's like a small town disguised as a big city. I feel like if you're doing something good and well, it's going to get around. So I'll be talking to someone and I'll see a piece on them. They're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I got it from this person. They were so wonderful. Or like, I got this tattoo and it wasn't a great experience and it was at this shop. And so I feel like that gets around. If you're like doing well, it, it will spread. I don't know if that totally answered your question or if it was
the girls are talking about who they like.
Yeah, the girls are talking about what they like. Yeah, and like leading the path for others to be like, okay, I heard a good thing about this place and I know this artist. And I mean, even like I've had a lot of people, women especially, on my table be like, yeah, I only want like female tattoo artists or female non-binary, just because they had one uncomfortable experience with a male tattooer. But at the same time, I know a ton of male tattooers who are super lovely, and really, I don't want there to be some like stigma that like males are out to get you in tattoo. I mean, I think there is a lot of that, and I think we are shining a light on it and it should change, but I don't think we should like throw them out with the bathwater. Like there's really talented male artists too, especially we even have in our shop, and they're amazing. And, you find those people that you welcome into that space and they like feel that it's important to honor what we're doing as females in the industry.
Good boys. Good boys.
Yeah, leading by example.
Good boys that are around. Yeah. Do you think you've had like an instance in the industry, like with other professionals or colleagues or whatever, where you've had to be like, I'm legit. I've built like this platform for myself. I've put the work in, and I'm a girl who's doing well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely, again, like I said earlier, the imposter syndrome runs deep forever, especially being a self-taught tattooer. But I, at the end of the day, feel like I can just, especially around like male tattooers, like I'll let my work speak for itself and like the reputation that I have. Like I'm just going, want to hang out, do a good thing, give someone a good tattoo. And like, I think at the end of the day, that will reflect in like how busy I am and how well I'm doing. Like I don't feel the need to like scream it from the rooftops, but it, you know, I think if you're just doing well, it shows. Like people will get the air of it. But yeah, I mean, I have definitely like been in situations where like, yeah, I've been kind of doing this for a little while. I'm like, I do have something to share and some knowledge and yeah, but I never really feel the need to like prove myself necessarily. Which I know is like a very lucky situation to be in, but like I feel confident going into like guesting at shops and other places now, at least, not always, but now I go into a place and like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I belong here. It feels good. But in my own art, I'll have like the imposter syndrome where I'm just like, what is my style? What am I doing? Like, I know there's a ton I don't know. I think there's value in apprenticeships. I think there's value in like learning from people who came before us. But I also like didn't have the opportunity to learn that way. So I kind of had to forge my own way. And I feel like that's not a bad thing either. Like some people might think.
No, yeah, I've taken classes from people who are completely self-taught and then picked up things along the way from other people who do like insane work, and you can do anything. I guess I think everybody has imposter syndrome. I think every tattoo artist, every person that you talk to in normal life, in and out of the industry, experiences imposter syndrome. What is something that you lean on to like help you get through that? Obviously, your book Busy Blessed, but it still happens.
Honestly, I just kind of like if I need a little pump up, I look to my friends at my tattoo shop. Oftentimes, I'll be like, if I do something I'm really proud of, I like in that moment, I'm like, look, everyone, like I need a little like reassurance, and I always get it because I'm surrounded by like awesome, amazing tattooers and friends, and or I'll just like go do a pop up where I'm gonna be really popular.
There you go.
Get a little wind in my sails. But yeah, I mean, I definitely it like I goes through waves. Like I'll have moments where I'm having like artist block and I can't draw anything, and then times where I'm doing really like, well, and I'll just like think on those times where I'm like, man, I was just cranking out Flash like crazy for like a year at that one point, and I'm like, I have that in me. I know I can do that again. And like anytime I do a really awesome tattoo, I'll go and look back at photos of my work and be like, you know how to do this. This isn't a bad thing. Or we had like there was a time I took a little time off or went on vacation and was tattooing one of our friends. And I think Chuck or someone was taking a video, and it was my first time back on machine in a while. And I took full line. And I was like, I know how to do this.
I think what's really unique about No Good and the energy that you guys have created there from the first. I also work at No Good. I guess I didn't say that, but
Yeah.
the first time I came to a draw night with you guys are just built such a good community there. But someone shows one piece of Flash and it can be anything, and the whole room is like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. I can't believe you made this. It's so encouraging. Like I feel like it has to be hard to like doubt. I find myself now like pieces that I definitely would have gone back and zoomed on and probably wouldn't have liked for like the next 6 months until I finally looked at it again and was like, that wasn't bad. But now I feel like I look at it and I'm like, I feel like my friends would like this. Like I feel like this, other people would look at it, and then but there's always like that little voice in the back of the head that is like, are they just being nice to me?
Yeah.
Really like
I mean,
this?
I feel like, yeah, there's like an environment of honesty, I feel like, especially in our shop, which I feel like that reverberates through a lot of shops now, and where you're like hyping each other up. But I feel like I can be honest and be like, that line I pulled was not my favorite, or like there's a tiny little spot on there that I might have blown out or something like that. And I feel like all of us being vulnerable with the fact that we are not like tattooing machines, and it's a human act, and that was like some of the better advice that I had gotten, that I was like, you're doing a tattoo, and yes, the goal is to make it perfect, but in reality, humans are not perfect, and we can't make completely perfect art, and that's what makes it art. It's like, if you wanted a like digital machine that you could slip your arm under and it will just scan a thing onto, there's a place for that now, but that is not what you're getting when you're coming to me. You're coming for my art, you're coming for my human imperfection, and it's going to look good to my standard, but there may be little things about it that aren't like a printer. And I think that's what makes it cool and special too. And being vulnerable about that in an artistic space, I think helps with the imposter syndrome and helps with the little voice in your head being like, do people actually like this? So I'm like, if I feel good about it and my friends are amping me up, I just have to hear and take in what I'm getting around me and move forward with that, and just know I'm going to do better on the next one than I did on the last one. Like, each tattoo I do is me leveling up for as long as I'm doing it. So that's how I feel about it.
Definitely. Yeah. Do you think that like the environment that you've grown up in tattooing in, it's like support system and all these really creative and loving women, has shaped who you are? Do you think that if you had gone a different way, things would look different?
Yeah, I mean, I think about that all the time. It's like the sliding doors thing, where like, what if I had gone in and like pursued a more traditional shop, or like walked in and did an apprenticeship? I mean, I think my work would look different for sure. I mean, my work is changing all the time. I feel like I'm constantly developing new styles within my style. Um, but yeah, I think it has allowed me to experiment a little bit more, being in such like an open and supportive space, and be able to like try new things and not feel like I have to just like fall under one category, which I think I like. I like the fact that I can like do a little fine line tattoo, but I can also do like pull a big fatty liner and do something big and crazy, and like know that I'm not limited to either one. But yeah, I feel like the kind of environment that I was in, I mean, I'm sure that exists in other spaces too, but the one from my experience that I've been in, it's just been like, yeah, I want to try this new thing, and I'm going to like put out art out there and just try it and see what happens. And I never get like judgment or negative feedback for it. And I think that's like a helpful thing for someone who's wanting to like grow and develop their artwork. Cause I mean, at the end of the day, we're all just drawing, and you can draw whatever you want if you have it within you. You don't have to like box yourself in. And I think it's helpful to have like friends around you and an environment that supports that and like cheers you on.
Yeah, it makes me wonder sometimes the people who did have to go through traditional apprenticeships, because you hear so many horror stories about the way they were treated or the way they were put in a box or the things they were told. Like, I remember my first tattoo on skin, one, my mentor was like nowhere to be found. And two, when he would pop around the corner, would be like, that looks like shit. And you're bad at this.
Yeah.
And then he would come at the end was like, well, what do you think? I start crying because I'm like, I don't know what am I supposed to think? I think it looks like shit because you told me that it looks like shit. So it just like makes me wonder how those people who definitely went into it with like so much heart because they worked sometimes years to even find an apprenticeship, maybe their art would look different too. Or the people who quit before they even found one because they couldn't afford it or whatever.
Yeah. I'm happy with my path and my journey, but at the same time, like, there's a lot of value in learning from the people around you.
From what I do know about your career and this path, and I think I mentioned it earlier, that you've gone through a lot of change. You tattooed in Austin, you've tattooed traveling, you went to LA for a little bit and you came back and all those things. What was a time in this journey that really made you like look in the mirror, or even other like a few instances that made you like kind of level with yourself?
Yeah, I mean, moving to LA last year definitely had me assessing some things. I mean, Austin, we're very lucky to be in a little bit of like a economic bubble because there are so many businesses that move here, and we do have like people who are still doing well, but the rest of the US is like struggling to put food on the table. I mean, not to say that isn't happening here as well, but we I think the city really focused on small businesses, Austin specifically. And I think that has something to attribute to its success and like people still doing pretty okay. And moving to LA, I was able to book maybe 1 or 3 people a month and was having to fly back to Austin where I would book out 30 people in 2 weeks. And it was a stark difference. And seeing that, I was like, okay, I'm seeing the instability of this job. Like, it's been pretty cushy. And I was living in a place and working at a shop that was like, does the work for me. Like, No Good has its own following, has its own platform. I have been doing it in this town for long enough that I feel like I have enough local recognition that I was supported by that. Living in LA for even that small amount of time, talking to my friends who tattoo in LA and how hard they were struggling, people who've been tattooing there for a long time, that was me looking at my situation being like, should I maybe have a fallback plan to this career? Like, should I maybe beef up my resume again? I mean, I've had other careers besides tattooing. Like, should I maybe start just kind of doing something small on the side so that if I have to, if the world stops, I can, you know, have something else. But I moved back to Austin. Things have been fine. And it's not like the busiest time I've ever had in my tattoo career, but it's definitely enough to like keep me in a comfortable situation. And yeah, that definitely, it's like jarring and scary. And like, as a self-employed person who depends on people coming to me, like I need someone walking in the door every day. That makes me kind of look at my situation often and being like, how do I reach out to people? Being dependent on Instagram being my like primary platform. If that shut down tomorrow, how do I reach people? Like, there's a lot of loose variables that are kind of completely out of my control. And that makes me think about my job and what I'm doing pretty often. That doesn't go away.
Yeah. What was that like going into LA and then having that? Because you had to have like a moment where you were like, we're going back. We're going back to Austin.
Yeah. Well, when my bank account's at zero, that was
Time's up.
That was kind of my, oh, time's up. Mom, can you drive me back to Austin?
Yeah, but I mean, that couldn't have been easy, you know? Like, it couldn't have been like a fun
No.
time.
Yeah, I was still having a great time out there. And I was guesting. I mean, I guested at a ton of shops, a lot of different shops. And I met so many cool people in tattooing, and a lot of them were leaving LA. And anyone who was staying was like, this is really rough. And I was cold emailing businesses, retail stores, being like, if you ever want a tattooer to pop up, you let me know. And I was getting lucky on some of that, like tattooing at record label parties and doing things like that. Like, I was hustling out there. But like after 7 months, I was like, and I'm still not getting anything. And I'm having to fly to Austin for like 2 weeks, do a week's, like a whole month's worth of tattoos in like a week and a half, like breaking my body. Yeah, I had a moment where I was like, I'm tired and I can't do this anymore. And I had something really comfortable and good. And also the community in Austin is so different. I mean, I think I was developing that in LA, but under the like financial strains I was under and the stress of all of that, I was like, all right, time to come back to the thing that I have, which at the time felt like a big moment of grief for me. So I was like, oh, I failed. I like went out and tried this thing and I just completely bombed, and like how embarrassing that I'm coming back. But in reality, I was like, no, there's nothing wrong with that. I tried. I can't help the fact that we're like in a micro recession. Like, and I'm not the only one. Like, I talked to so many tattooers who are having a really hard time, and I was like, okay, I'm not alone in this. I have a good thing. I'm lucky to have a good thing in Austin and a really good platform. Like, go and live in that. And there's a lot of good here. So yeah, it was a come to Jesus moment. It hit pretty hard, but it was like getting over the like mourning of this new thing I was trying to do. But you just gotta try stuff sometimes. Take the leap.
Yeah. Otherwise, maybe if you didn't do it, maybe you'd regret it. Like, think about it forever.
Yeah. I'd be like in 5 years, like, what if I had moved away or whatever, and I tried it and it was really super fun, but ultimately like not what works for me right now. And then maybe it can work for me in a few years, but at least I know how I would do it. I would do it a little differently.
Yeah. And you can share that advice to other people that are leaving and going to, I've heard New York is similar right now.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, go guest long term in a place and like rent your home out for a little bit and do it cheaply for a little while and like really get following in the place you want to be, but before you just like leap into it. But yeah, that would be my advice for anyone trying to do that. But again, it's like we're struggling out there.
Yeah,
it's hard.
It is. I keep seeing posts and on Friday the 13th, Big Tattoo Holiday, I've never seen more shops posting like, we have no line, we can take anybody right now. Like, everybody is experiencing that. And I've talked to clients about that too, and they seem surprised.
Yeah, I think the people who are like getting tattoos are like, what are you talking about? We're all here. But I think there's this whole like wave of people who just like can't afford to get tattoos right now. And that's the reality of it. Like there's, inflation and all these other things. I mean, I think LA for me had like when I moved there, the month I moved there, the writer's strike happened. And that was like a whole industry of people who in LA and New York find their livelihood from film, and that's like a service industry basically in those cities, and they were just stopped, no income. So I think that's had like a ripple effect a little bit amongst those cities. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're having a slowdown because people can't afford it simply.
When you're thinking about your career, I guess like clients in general, have there been people or projects or events or anything like that that's like really stuck with you that you like think about, good or bad?
I mean, good. I've had just really loyal clients, especially here. I've had people who have given me their entire limb, even when I was hand poking, which is kind of nuts, to just be like, let's fill this thing out. I just finished like one of the biggest pieces I've ever done on my client Maddie. She let me do her butt cheek and her entire other side when I had never done a large piece before like that. And she was just like, you got it.
Go for it.
I was like, okay, if you think I do. So those things always stick with me when someone's just willing to kind of like trust the process and let me do my thing. And like at the end of the day, like I know how to do art. And if you're willing to like let me do it, I mean, obviously with discussion on like preference and things like that. But those are always like, I feel like impactful because then I can put that out there and people are like, you know how to do that. Now you can do that. Like I said, I didn't want to be doing tiny little stamp tattoos forever. And now I'm not. And that was just because I put it out into the universe and was like, who wants a giant tattoo? I'll do it for you. Let's go. And now that I can do that, I'm grateful for it. And that's really stuck with me that people are just like so trusting. I'm like, you don't even know me. like
thanks.
Just like willing to let me do your entire butt cheek.
You've seen what I've put on Instagram and that was good enough for you.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really nice. And I don't know, there's been some like, I mean, I've had some crazy events where like things are so wild and you're tattooing and you've got like a list of 20 people and you get them all done. Like that's really cool. And through that, I found really cool communities I would have never met in Austin. Like I used to tattoo at these doula conventions that were so rad. Met so many people in birth work and learned so much about birth work that I had never heard of before. So I feel like it's like given me access to these like subcultures in town, or like this cycling club, breakfast club, that my friend Will Bryant's a part of. I've gone out and tattooed with Chuck in Marfa and like met all these really amazing people that I'll like see out now, and they've got my work on them, and doing collaborations with artists like that are incredible as Will, and being able to tattoo their artwork in collaboration and doing things like that. Like I feel like it's expanded my social circle, and like not just in tattooers but in artists in general. I've met a lot of like different medium artists through tattooing, and I think that's like a really cool thing that sticks with me, is that like it transcends. You're able to expand your artistic field and your friend group just by doing what you like, and people are gravitating towards it.
That's true. That's very true. Have there been any like ones that you've, after you gotten done and you walked away and been like, I need to breathe. I need a break?
Many. Yeah, there was one where I drove a girl who I think she didn't get a tattoo, but she had a little bit too much to drink, I think, and was in a weird situation. I ended up driving her home from a event because she was gonna try to drive or go with her boyfriend who was really horrible, and I had to like mom voice her and be like, you either get in the car with me right now or you go with your asshole boyfriend who was gonna leave you here in the first place. And she's like, yes ma'am. So like I've had weird event stuff like that where I'm like been tattooing for 9 hours and then have to deal with this weird situation. But that's what you get when you're like tattooing at like a brewery or something. But yeah, and events where you're just like talking the entire time and concentrating and doing also very hard thing. Like I go nonverbal, like after our kind of good convention that we throw. Like I think I sat on the couch and didn't talk to anyone for 3 days, maybe.
Like, leave me here.
So yeah, I mean, I'm a Cancer. I need a lot of recharge time. So
that's fair. Do you think there's ever been like a
Yeah.
time where you've like been driving home or at home with Namshe, your dog, or something, and been like, we made it, dude. Like, we're doing this. Do you ever look back and be like, have you had that moment where you're just like, I'm doing it. I did it. We're here.
Yeah, I mean, definitely after the convention and like walking away with like a huge payday or like something like that where I'm just like, oh my God, like I just made like a month's worth of like, I've covered my entire bills for the month in one day. And like that moment is really like rewarding because I'm like, this can be a life sustaining job. And like, it is worth putting time and effort into it. Like that really always makes me feel pretty excited. Or like, I'll get a phone call from my dad or something, and he'll be like, I was at the country club and having lunch with my buddies, and the waitress had a tattoo from you. And I was giving her your business card, telling her about you. And she was like, I already have one with you. Or like, my mom will call me and be like, I was at World Market and I was telling the girl checking me out about you, and she already has an appointment with you. And so like moments like that. And I'm like, it's okay, mom and dad. I hired them to say that to make you proud of me.
They're all hired actors.
They're all hired actors. No, but those moments are pretty cool. I'm like, oh, that's really nice. Like, that's, feels special. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right. So, yeah.
Have you ever had to make a tattoo
Yeah.
like make you cry out of being proud?
Yeah, I cry. I totally, that's not saying a lot because I'm a crier, but after I saw Maddie, the large piece on her side, after I had shaded it, she came in to start her butt cheek tattoo on the other side, and I got to see it healed for the first time. I fucking cried. I was looking at it and I started welling up, and I was like, I was not expecting this reaction.
This is my art.
And I was like, I'm not trying to be weird right now, but like, this is like a thing I've wanted to do for a long time, and you just like let me do it. And I'm really, just so good. It was like more like the overwhelming feeling of like being grateful that someone would trust me enough. And like, that's so cool. Like the fact that the stranger who I'd never met before, but now I've spent like over 20 hours with, like her and I have gotten to know each other, and I was like, wow, this is so weird. Like, you were a stranger when you walked in the door, and now I know if I run into you out somewhere, like, you're my friend. And that's pretty cool. And that makes me a little touchy-feely. So
I do love that. Yeah. I feel like sometimes we get to know people and we get to know their families and their friends and their partners, and then it's like, we're part of each other's lives now. Like, I have people that specifically, when they message me, I know what's going down. I know we got to do some therapy. We're having something.
Yeah. Get some therapy in, or like I'll get like invited to like a client's birthday party or something, and I'm like, wow. Or I was a part of, there's a small group of friends in Austin that I've met through tattooing, and like I've tattooed quite a few of them in this friend group. And I was a part of their like holiday trivia questions one year. Like, so funny. They were like, what's the handle of the tattooer who has tattooed more than 10 of us or something? And I was like a part of a trivia question. And I was like, what?
That's so sweet. That is like
I
thoughtful.
know.
You're like,
It's so funny. And like, I don't know. And I have met them like a decade ago, tattooing them in the back of a store. And now I'm like meeting their baby or something. And I'm like, this is so cool. Like, I'm getting to like travel with these people through time, through our like, crazy adolescence of tattooing in stores to like, now I'm in a shop and they're visiting me and they have like a child and like things have changed. And I'm like, wow, the growth. Or seeing like a stick and poke next to like a crazy big machine tattoo that I'm doing. I'm like, look at the journey on one limb.
we have made it so far. It's a timeline. You know what's really going to get you? When their kid is old enough to get a tattoo and you tattoo them too.
Yes. If I'm still tattooing, oh my God, I will be like, I remember when I was tattooing your parents on the floor of a fitting room.
Sometimes it goes faster than you think, like, especially if their kids are like young when you started tattooing them, and then like it's only going to take like 10 more years, girl. Yeah. I am getting to the end of my questions. I only have a few more left. So if you have any stories, some insight, pivotal moments for you, or anything that like, is there something that like you like to share about your time? Someone that you've been like, I can't believe I worked with that person. That was crazy. They're like an idol of mine.
Well, pretty funny. When I first started looking into hand poke tattooing, like literally back in 2011, I only followed a couple of hand pokers online, one of them being T. Lee, who is now a very good friend of mine. And when they were tattooing, they were living in New York. And then I watched them open Welcome Home on Instagram and just had this whole like following journey of them. And then when Chuck told me one day, like, guess who reached out to guest with us? I was like, oh my God. I was so excited. I was like, whoa, this is like, in a sense, you have those things where you're like, follow someone on Instagram for so long, they're almost like celebrity in your mind. Mm-hmm. And T would hate that I even made that comparison. But it was like a thing where I was like, oh my gosh. And I just felt like I knew we had some interactions over Instagram over the years. And I was like, I feel like me and this person are going to be really good friends, and just like had a sense about it. And then they came and guested at the shop and we had like dinner together and we just like fell in love with each other. And I was like, oh yeah, this totally makes sense. And then I lived 3 minutes away from them in LA and we spent like every day together. It was very special. And like, that was such a weird, like, you meet your idols. And I mean, T is a hand poker and does the most gnarly work, like huge back pieces. There's still tattooers like that I still would love to meet. Someone was tattooing at the shop recently. I mean, we have like sometimes upwards of 20 guest artists in the shop every month, depending on the month. So I'm getting to meet these people I follow on Instagram all the time and constantly discover new tattooers, which is really cool. But yeah, I feel like I'm always seeing that and I'm like, oh my God, this person is coming to work with us. And I'm like, I kind of just want to watch them. Like, I get to like be in the same space, which also like kind of helps and hurts the imposter syndrome sometimes. Like, I'm like, I am tattooing in the same space as this person who I like idolize, but also, oh my God, I'm tattooing next to this insane tattooer. So it goes both ways.
So true. T really is such a lovely person. Yeah. What right now is inspiring you, or who is inspiring you? Right.
I recently was re-inspired by, I went to our local tattoo flash book store, Belzell Books. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But I went in there and talked to the owner, and she was super amazing and had all this knowledge. And me and Em went in, and Sappy Tattoo, and went in and shopped with her and picked out a bunch of books. And she like literally made us subtract some from our cart because she was like, I want you to look through these and really digest these books and then come back. and get more if you want. And her, like, me saying what I was kind of looking to do and get into, like, I want to do more full top to bottom pieces, like line work, shading, and color, where like with contemporary, sometimes people just want line work, or some people just want line work with minimal shading. I want to do like complete pieces. And I was able to like kind of tell her that, and she was able to refer me a bunch of really cool books to read and look at art references of, and tattoo artists from the past that I was able to like do some cool referencing. So that's really inspired me recently, kind of looking backward. There's definitely a lot of tattooers on my Instagram whose handles I don't always remember because I'm not good at that I've been looking at. But yeah, that's kind of been inspiring me recently, kind of like looking to do the complete tattoo, which I know sounds really lame, but it's a new thing for me.
It's cool. There's always something to look forward to because people practice Neo, people practice whatever. Like there is always something next that you're like looking at inspiring. Now I want to go to Bell's Little Books. I think I followed them, but I don't think I've been.
We need to take a field trip because I'm also wanting to go back. I wanted to take Matt when he was in town, Black Scraps, but yeah, we'll go together. We'll go on a bookstore date because I love it in there.
Get some more. Do you have any upcoming pieces or projects that or events? Anything that you're working on that's special to you or getting excited for?
We have, well, you and I are going to do a pop-up, which is going to be exciting, with modern animals. So that will be fun. And then, Doom Forge I think it's in February out at Jester King is always a good time. And as far as pieces go, I have like some bigger stuff, like more floral type stuff that people are coming in, but I'm really excited. I'm drawing some flash right now that I'm really excited about to kind of like get to that like full color shading line work piece, a little bit bolder lines that I'm excited to do. That I'll be releasing like coming here in the new year. I'm going to try to get on doing like once a month flash releases like I used to. And being more consistent about drawing again, because this was not the year for it for me.
I'm excited to see what you're working on.
Yeah,
show me.
Me too.
Well, where can people find you? Where do you want people to go interact with you? Anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, you can obviously always find me at Dope Toast on Instagram, but I also have dopetoast.com, my website. There is a newsletter you can sign up for on the homepage of my website, which I would love to take some of the power away from Instagram. So God forbid it shuts down one day. I've got all of y'all's emails, and you can get updates about events and flash releases and whatever else I might be up to. But yeah, that's pretty much where you can reach me. And obviously at No Good Tattoo for the foreseeable future.
Love it. Well, thanks for being my first guest. I feel like I learned a lot. So
thanks, Kale.
I appreciate you.
Appreciate
I'll see you.
Love you.
Have
Thank
a
you.
blast. Love you too. See you later.
See you later.